Hey everybody, Chaplain Sal back with another coffee talk with Reverend Sal. I wanted to come back to you and do a short video because I'm actually answering a question I received. If you remember a couple videos ago, I asked for suggestions, what you would like to hear me talk about. So I actually got an email from Matt, one of the CNAs up in AL2.
What would you say you do here?
And he said, you posted on your coffee talk that you are looking for topics. I was curious what end-of-life services you provide. Is it prayer or talking with families? So thank you, Matt, for that question. So I want to answer that. I also kind of want to go over what differentiates a chaplain from a pastor. Every chaplain is usually a pastor or a rabbi, and not every rabbi or pastor is a chaplain. It's a little confusing. So, and I've got some resources that I use when I deal with families. So what differentiates a chaplain from a, say, priest or pastor or rabbi or imam? Because there's or monk. There's pretty much every faith tradition that we know of. Christianity, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, Jewish, whether it's Orthodox or Reformed. There's Muslim chaplains. There are Buddhist chaplains. There are chaplains of no faith at all. Humanist chaplains. So there's chaplains for pretty much every spiritual path that you can think of, pretty much. So obviously I'm a Protestant Christian chaplain, so my own theology, the theology of that guy right there, John Calvin. Oh, and that guy too, Jesus, two JCs. So Jesus and John Calvin shape my theology and how I pursue and perceive and do chaplaincy. Just as they shape and inform how pastors do their pastoring. So that's my guys. So when I went to seminary years and years ago, 15 years ago actually, I kind of had an inkling that I wanted to be a pastor. That's kind of where I felt called, or a chaplain. That's where I felt called to go. Definitely didn't want to be a pastor. So went into seminary, went through the process, got ordained, work here now, worked at a hospital before. And I always tell folks that what differentiates a pastor from a chaplain is a pastor tells you the answers and a chaplain helps you find the answers. Now, not that a pastor doesn't help you find your own theology and answer your own questions, but really that's more of the gearing of a chaplain is to enter into a space with someone. Usually, traditionally, it's in a hospital or a community like ours where people are in distress. And we enter in and we become a non-anxious presence. We simply sit with people, we listen, we help guide them, help inform them, we answer their questions, and ultimately we find that most people who talk to the chaplain answer their own questions, come to terms with their own questions about faith and God and life, and we just help them navigate that. Whereas, say, a pastor, you go to a pastor on Sunday or Saturday, depending on your faith tradition, to hear and to be educated and informed on what your faith tells you on certain things. That's not to say that pastors don't help you navigate through life's ups and downs and those types of things, but generally chaplains meet you in that moment and guide you through it. So that's the broad difference. Now, so to get specifically to what do I at end of life, because a lot of what I do is end of life. Similar with a hospital chaplain, a hospital chaplain will also see people who are in there for treatment for diseases, cancers, routine stuff, surgery, help them navigate around that. But because of the nature of our facility, a good chunk of my work is end of life. So, got a couple resources. Here's a book that I read doing my chaplaincy training. Now there's more up-to-date stuff on the issue, but on grief and grieving, finding the meaning of grief through the 5 stages of loss. This was a very influential book by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was a doctor, and she kind of observed that in her work as a doctor, there's essentially 5 stages of grief that people go through. So you learn to deal with that and how to help people navigate. So a lot of my work at End of Life is talking to the residents or their families and helping them navigate grief and the feelings that come about as their loved one is dying, sense of guilt or anger or denial, how to work through those things to let go and to come to terms with the fact that their loved one is dying. So that's a lot of what I do, is working with that. Kind of like what a social worker might do as a counselor. I do as a counselor basically for religious people. I'm kind of like a religious social worker, although I'm not credentialed as a social worker. And then I have, from my denomination, this is the, Book of Common Worship, Pastoral Edition. So this is the official book for the Presbyterian Church, USA. It has orders of worship. It has things to use for ministry to those who are sick or in the hospital. So when I do communion, or if someone has passed away, a lot of the liturgy and the prayers that I do with the family are out of this book, like comforting the bereaved. I use it so much, it opened up right to that. So, just some witness to the resurrection. So a lot of what I do at the end of life is I also then do the funerals for these people. So I kind of walk them through the process of dying, and then walk the family to the process of letting go and saying goodbye with a funeral. I also have, this is the Book of Common Prayer. This is from the Episcopal Church. I've got a couple editions of that. So I use these books a lot for communion, for prayers, for comforting the bereaved. So to answer your question, Matt, I do both. I pray and I talk. And more importantly, I listen. So really, I want to say 75% of what I do with families around end of life is I'm just present. I listen. We talk. We kind of help them process. This goes for the residents and their families. And then obviously as it gets closer to actual death is when I do the more formal religious stuff, prayers. If they're Catholic, I reach out to the local parish and have the priest come and do Sacrament of the Sick or confession. If they're not Roman Catholic, then I will hear their confession or do the Protestant equivalent to Sacrament of the Sick, which is just essentially anointing and blessings. So it really depends where in the process of death I enter in. For some of our residents, I'm more familiar with them and I've walked them further. For some residents, I get the call either if it's at night or during the day or on a weekend, and I get called in and, hey, so-and-so has passed away. Can you come in and be present? And I'll come in and I'll meet the family and do condolences and pastoral care around that. So it's pastoral care. So I care for their pastoral needs, their religious needs around death. So that's a lot of what I do. And then obviously the rest of the week when I'm not doing end of life stuff, I'm meeting with associates, with leadership, with staff, with residents, just providing care, whether it's around life issues or stress around work. So a lot of what I do day to day is kind of like a therapist or a counselor. Although I'm not a therapist, I'm not a trained therapist, but a lot of what I do is kind of like that. So hopefully this answers your question, Matt. If not, let me know. But yeah, so this is kind of, thank you, Matt, for being the first one to reach out and email me about a topic. I hope I answered your question. If not, let me know. Otherwise, this is the kind of stuff I want to do. Let me know. Keep me posted. Any questions that you have come up, send them my way, and I'll address them. All right, guys. A little bit longer than I normally do. Sorry about that. Not really. You get me talking about what I like to do, and I will talk. You know, I come off as a quiet guy, but if you get me going, I will talk. You have to give me coffee, too. All right, guys. So, Dancing Jesus and Calvin, John Calvin, say goodbye. As does Chewbacca and Scott Ian from Anthrax. They all say goodbye. All right, guys, rock on. I will talk to you soon. This has been Coffee Talk with your chaplain.